Hello, everyone. I'm Olympia. Thank you for being here with me in this wonderful place called Lights Out Library. And I have a great story to tell you. I'm going to tell you about Felidae, about cats. We will see where they come from because they appeared on Earth long before humans did, and review species of cats that are now extinct, some relatively recently, like the Smilodon, a species of saber-toothed cat. I will also tell you about many extant species that are still alive, their particularities, and their lifestyle, including lions, tigers, cougars, lynxes, cheetahs, and more. And of course, we will also spend time on domestic cats too, and their companionship with humans that started thousands of years ago. But first, I would like to let you know that we have a Patreon page for those of you who wish to and can support this project, get more from it, and listen ad-free on your favorite podcast app. Patreon is a platform that allows you to contribute directly to our work financially. Our least expensive tier is $3.50 per month, but it doesn't mean you will get less. We let people contribute what they wish or can, and everyone gets everything that is on our page, because the world is a better place when the sun shines for everyone. You will gain access to 24 exclusive episodes, which include interesting biographies, the 7 ancient wonders of the world, and many more. We add a new one every month, and you can listen and download all the episodes with and without background sounds. And as a token of our appreciation, we offer advanced releases to our patrons. We have added links to Patreon, as well as links to different streaming options, which may be better suited for you. You will find them in the description of the episode. And now, before we begin, if you wish to, you may close your eyes and allow yourself to forget about any worries. Assume a comfortable position. Maybe move a bit to settle. Take a long, deep, relaxing breath. And when you slowly exhale, feel your shoulders drop. Release the tension in your neck. Let your face soften and your jaw relax. Make sure your fingers are not clenched and that your legs are relaxed too. And allow the sound of my voice to guide you through this journey. And now, let's get started. To begin with, what are cats, or Felidae? Felidae is a scientific name for a family of mammals, and cat means the same, but it's a colloquial term either for all felids or, more specifically, Felis catus, the domestic cat. So I will use both terms, Felidae or cats, interchangeably. If we want to locate Felis among other animal species, one way of looking at them is to search for their ancestors and their relations to different other species. Felidae are mammals. Mammals in taxonomy, the science concerned with the classification of organisms, is a class, a very wide category that contains many subdivisions. Subdivisions into subclasses, families, and genera. all the way down to individual species. We have talked about mammals already several times in past stories when we talked about dogs and wolves, whales and humans, so I will not repeat all this. But bear in mind that despite their differences and how they have diverged over thousands and thousands of generations, all mammals are believed to have a single ancestor, a single species from which they have inherited a few common traits, including the fact that their females have mammary glands, glands that produce milk to feed their young. They also have a neocortex, a particular region of the brain that no other class, reptiles, birds, fish, also has. Mammals evolved and diverged many times, giving birth to new branches of the evolutionary tree, branches or clades, as they are called. So if we start exploring the tree from mammals to cats, there are three subclasses of mammals. First, one of them, to which felids belong together with humans, is placental mammals, placental as opposed to marsupial. A placental mammal gives birth to a well-developed young that, while still needing care and protection, is already capable of living outside its mother's body. It can breathe on its own and feed, even as it continues to grow. Marsupials follow a different reproductive strategy. Their young are born at a very early stage of development and must continue to grow in a pouch on the mother's abdomen. Both approaches are effective, but placental mammals have historically been more successful at spreading across the globe. They inhabit every single continent and include thousands of species, whereas marsupials today are largely confined to Austria, parts of Asia, and the Americas. There is a third, less well-known group of mammals, the monotremes or monotremata, found only in Australia and New Guinea. These mammals lay eggs, meaning the embryo develops entirely outside the mother's body. Yet once the eggs hatch, the mother nourishes her young with milk. The most famous monotreme is the platypus, which is endemic to eastern Australia. Although this reproductive strategy never became dominant among mammals, fossil evidence shows that a great diversity of monotremes existed in the past than the few species that survive today. So returning to our classification, there are mammals, and among them placental mammals. This subclass is further divided into groups, known as orders. One of these orders is carnivora, which includes species that primarily consume flesh, preying on other animals. There are plenty of species that are carnivorous and eat primarily meat without being mammals, of course. Some fish, insects, or birds can be carnivorous. But carnivorans, or the order Carnivora, is the name given to this particular order of mammals. They just happen to be mammals that consume meat, and they include all cats, and also wolves, dogs, bears, skunks, seals, hyenas. It's a very diverse and rich order of mammals. Now we are getting closer to cats. because this order, Carnivora, is itself divided into two suborders. There are dog-like carnivorans, also called Caniformia, which include wolves and bears, and there are cat-like carnivorans, also known as Feliformia. In suborders, there are families of species, and this is what the felids, the cats, are, a family of Feliformia. The members of Feliformia that are not cats, but rather cousins of cats, are animals like hyenas or mongooses or viverids. There are different species of all these different animals, and they are cousins indeed, based on the current state of evolutionary science. Feliforms are thought to have diverged from other carnivorans at some point between 50 to 35 million years ago. And the first cats, the products of the divergence within the feliforms, would have appeared 35 to 28 million years ago. This is not that old compared with the evolution of animal species on Earth, which would have begun hundreds of millions of years ago. But still, felids are 10 times as ancient as human beings are. They were already around long before our family emerged as a product of another divergence on another branch of the mammalians. So now that we have covered that, what was the first ever cat that we know of? It was called Proailurus, and it lived 25 to 30 million years ago. Its remains have been found in Western Europe and in Mongolia too. Proailurus was a relatively compact and small animal, weighing about 20 pounds. That's 9 kilograms. But it was a genus with different species, and the largest predators discovered could have reached up to 23 kilograms. That's about the same as a medium-sized dog. So Proailurus would have been a bit larger and heavier than a domestic cat, but also with different proportions, similar to a modern viverid, with shorter limbs and a long tail. It is thought to have spent a lot of time on trees based on its morphology. But obviously, this is just a guess. Another ancient species that succeeded Proailurus and was bigger is called Pseudaiurus. This one was about the size of a cougar, so not huge, but a bit more impressive predator. Its presence is documented in Eurasia and America. That's significant because felids arrived relatively late to America. The first signs of their presence in North America date from 18 million years ago. They took their time because this is 20 million years after other families of carnivorans like the Ursidae, the bears, and they also arrived 10 million years after the Canidae, that include wolves, foxes, and coyotes. These different families of carnivorans are often in competition for prey. So this suggests that the felids had to adapt and fight for their share when they arrived in North America. Some species remained relatively small, but at the time there was an abundance of large herbivorous prey. Members of the megafauna which provided an ideal food source for large predators. There was a niche to occupy, and indeed, a new type of larger, more powerful felids with enormous canine teeth emerged around 13 million years ago and spread worldwide. They are on all continents, except in islands small or big like Australia. These new felids were given a complicated name, Machairodontidae, but they are better known as saber-toothed cats. And these saber-toothed cats included different genera with different species in each genus. The most famous of these genera, and the last one to disappear about 10,000 years ago, so rather recently, was the Smilodon. Like all their cousins, the Smilodon were large, saber-toothed cats that had evolved to take advantage of huge prey. It is speculated that one of the reasons for their extinction was their excessive specialization, which their large teeth and powerful jaws reflected. Based on their morphology, they were likely not well adapted for chasing prey over long distances in open terrain. Instead, they probably relied on ambushes, attacking their prey from cover in forested environments. Their large size and high energy demands meant they could not rely on small prey. When larger prey disappeared, possibly due to competition with humans, they had no alternative to fall back on. Saber-toothed cats were eventually replaced by other apex predators within the felid family that were faster and more adaptable, such as lions and tigers. Another notable extinct species is called Panthera blythii. It has been dated to 6 to 4 million years ago, and this one is also important because it is the earliest known representative of a subgroup of felids, a genus called Panthera, which includes the largest cats alive nowadays: tigers, lions, jaguars, and also leopards and snow leopards are all panthers. Over the past 4 to 5 million years, this genus has come to include some of the most powerful and formidable predators among cats. The different species within Panthera are still closely related, having diverged relatively recently. This close relationship is why they can sometimes interbreed, even though they are distinct species within the genus. For example, crosses between lions and tigers can be viable, though we will return to this later. Of course, all the cats that appeared and went extinct over the past 20 million years were not all large. The majority of species had more modest sizes, closer to domestic cats, and they preyed on much smaller animals, rodents, reptiles, or even insects. But the point is that all cats, large and small, have a common ancestor and they share characteristics. What are the main ones? First, they can protract and retract their claws by contracting muscles in the toes. When these muscles are not contracted, the claws are retracted. It takes a little effort to make them appear. They all have 5 toes on their forefeet, but only 4 on their hind feet. And under their feet, they all have these little cushions with 3 lobes. Another shared characteristic is the shape of their skulls, which are foreshortened and with larger orbits, more than other mammals. In these orbits, they have relatively large eyes that have especially good night vision, thanks to a little layer of tissue behind the retina, a layer called the tapetum lucidum. It is a retroreflector that sends back light through the retina and increases the light available to the photoreceptors. This layer, this tapetum lucidum, is not exclusive to felids. It can be found in the eyes of other species of nocturnal carnivores or deep-sea animals too. Obviously, this is an advantage for predators that hunt at night. In complete darkness, a cat cannot see anything. It is as blind as we are. But even a small amount of ambient light, which is typical in real conditions, is amplified by its eyes, giving the cat much better vision than ours. Yet another common characteristic is their teeth. They all have 30 teeth. Obviously, their canine teeth are large, as they serve to bite through flesh. Their tongues are always raspy. They are covered with tiny cones that are shaped like horns, and this helps them to rasp meat from their prey. It also helps with grooming. There are plenty of other physical details common to all cats, but one last characteristic worth mentioning is that many species can purr. But what is purr exactly? As you know, the purr is the sound produced by cats, and when they are loud, it is called a roar. But it is the same thing. Only felids and their cousins, the vivarids, can purr. Other animals produce sounds that remind one of a purr, like kangaroos, wallabies, rabbits, and guinea pigs, but it only sounds similar. It is a defense mechanism, and the mechanism of true purring is actually still a mystery. There are several hypotheses about how the sound is produced. One suggests that cats generate it with their vocal cords, rhythmically dilating and constricting the opening between them, the glottis. The purring sound would then result from air vibrating as it passes through during both inhalation and exhalation, which explains why the sound is continuous. When we speak, or when animals vocalize in general, this is done while exhaling. We cannot at the same time inhale and speak, at least not normally. But cats can purr while taking in air and exhaling. Another hypothesis is that this is not determined by vocal cords, but by a bone of the larynx, the hyoid bone. Depending on the ossification of this bone, some cat species could purr when the ossification is complete, or not when it's incomplete. Because another observation that was made is that not all species of cats can purr. In fact, they can either purr like domestic cats or roar like Panthera, lions or tigers, but a given species of cats can never do both. The difference would be this hyoid bone. Then there is the question of the meaning of purring. All cat owners know that cats tend to purr when they feel relaxed. Good. Typically when you pet them, and they often do it. But it may be a bit more complicated than that. Cats can purr at different frequencies, and it is believed that they also use the purr to solicit things: food, petting, attention, not just to show their contentment. Actually, this behavior appears very early in cats, as early as when they are still very young, blind, and nursed by their mothers. It is believed that mutual purring of the mother and the kittens is a way of communicating, a mechanism of reassurance. Maybe this behavior that started instinctively becomes associated with well being, and cats would keep doing it as they grow up. But apart from expressing contentment or asking for things from their human caretakers, it also has been observed that cats can purr to signal they are not a threat and they don't intend to turn aggressive, together with other means of communication that I will tell you about later. This is a way for them to express their feelings and their intentions. So now that we have taken a look at where felids come from as a family of species, let's review some of these species, where they live and how, starting with probably the most imposing one, at least the largest: tigers. Tigers are formidable predators, but they have lost most of their natural region, most of their range across Asia along the past centuries. There once were tigers from Korea to East India, including all of East China, Vietnam, Thailand, and most of India. And tigers also lived in Central Asia and the Caucasus. Their range has been limited to a few countries, especially in India, Indonesia, or Myanmar, where they are protected. The species itself is not really endangered because there are many in zoos across the world, and they reproduce rather well in captivity. But their living areas in the wilderness are under pressure. Cohabitation of wild tigers and humans is always a bit complicated because they are rather aggressive. They are territorial animals, but even more because they prey on relatively large animals, and they will attack herds of cows, sheep, or goats whenever given the occasion. Still, tigers are widely admired and seen as beautiful and charismatic, at least in places where people don't live alongside them. In regions where they do, they are not only respected, but also feared. A main factor that attacks their habitat, their range, is deforestation, because tigers typically live in forests where they ambush their prey, probably like saber-toothed cats did thousands of years ago. They live a mostly solitary life. Males and females establish a territory and defend it against other tigers of the same sex. Typically, the range of males and females overlap, and occasionally they will meet to mate. Females typically give birth to 2 or 3 cubs at a time. The young stay with their mother for about 2 years, growing and learning before leaving to establish their own territories, often by taking over space from one or more other tigers. I mentioned earlier that tigers can interbreed with other species of their genus, Panthera, especially with lions. This happens only in captivity. There was a time when tigers and lions could have encountered each other in the wild, but that is no longer the case today. Their regions do not overlap at all, except for a tiny region in India, since tigers are in Asia and lions mostly in Africa. But in captivity, it is possible, and their hybrids are viable. A female tiger and a male lion can have an offspring called a liger. I mentioned before that tigers were the largest cats. It is true if we consider species, but not entirely exact, because ligers can be larger than tigers. It is so because lion males pass on a gene that promotes growth in their offspring. Typically, this gene would be somewhat mitigated or inhibited by a corresponding gene brought by the lioness, the female lion. But when the female is a tiger, nothing inhibits the growth promoting gene, and so ligers can be very large. They can reach 800 pounds, about 360 kilograms in adulthood. Males also reach a total length, tail included, of 10 to 12 feet. That's 3 to 3.5 meters. The appearance of ligers is, as could be expected, a mix of lion and tiger. The equivalent to a liger, when the father is a tiger and the mother is a lion, is called a tigon. And tigons are not bigger than their parents because they inherit growth inhibiting genes from both. Typically, they will weigh around 400 pounds, which is still respectable, but only half of a liger. Beyond these two examples, other pairings within the genus Panthera are also possible. Jaguars and leopards can be crossed with each other, or with lions and tigers. These combinations are more complicated due to differences in sizes, but they remain biologically possible. As mentioned, there was a time when lions and tigers could meet in nature, because even though wild lions only live in Africa nowadays, they are native to both Asia and Africa. They went as far east as Central and Southern Asia. In antiquity, lions also lived in the Middle East, in Greece, in North Africa, and probably in Southern Europe, in Spain, in Italy, and in the south of France. But they disappeared from these regions due to hunting or competition with humans. Cultural traces of the presence of lions are still visible, though in mythologies from the Middle East or in Greek mythology. Lions appear in many stories, for example, around the hero Hercules. But today, lions are restricted to different regions of sub-Saharan Africa. And apart from their appearance, a major difference with tigers is the lifestyle. Lions are social animals, social predators like wolves, even though the dynamic of their group is different. Lions are also potentially dangerous for humans, but probably less so than tigers, because they typically don't seek out and prey on humans. Occasionally, they can turn aggressive if they feel threatened, or if they are really hungry, but they prefer to hunt other prey. So, as you know, lions tend to live in groups called prides. that on average have about 15 individuals, but that can go up to 30. Even though the males are physically larger and stronger and occupy positions of power in a pride, the pride is defined by the females. They are the stable unit in the group, in the sense that the group is like a family, and a majority of females will stay within the group in which they were born, while the males leave it, all of them at some point, to join another pride. Generally, females do not tolerate new females from other prides, which complicates transfers of females, but they will occasionally happen. The pride is constantly evolving. New cubs are born regularly, of course. There are individuals that die, and young males regularly leave the pride in search of another one. However, there are generally several males cohabitating in the pride, but one dominates the others. Dominates here means that this male has priority for everything, mating with the females or for food, but the dominant position is always at risk. Other males will regularly challenge the dominant one, and eventually the top spot will change hands or paws. The top position is rarely occupied for more than a few years by a male lion. With aging and competition from younger males, every lion will eventually lose its place in a pride. There is also a spontaneous sharing of activities between males and females. They can all be polyvalent, but they are instinctively drawn to specialize. The hunters that provide food and hunt collaboratively are more females than males. And on the other hand, the defenders of the pride's territory are the males. They patrol the limits of their territory and will engage other predators, especially other lions trying to enter theirs. As often in nature, there are exceptions to these rules. For example, prides with a single male are possible, especially for one subspecies, the Tsavo lion, found in southern and eastern Asia. All lions also don't spend their entire life in prides. Males can spend years as nomads, living alone or in small groups of other males, until they attempt to join a pride, often having to fight to earn acceptance. When they are without females, they must hunt for themselves or find other sources of food. In fact, a significant part of a lion's diet comes from carrion, dead animals, which they may share with or contest against hyenas. But in any case, their diet is dominated by flesh, like all other cats. They are called hypercarnivores. Technically, this term is attributed to species that feed at 70% or more on meat. And for felids, there is no way around that. Contrary to other species of predators, can adapt more easily and eat a lot of different things, like bears, for example. Bears need meat, but they are able to survive a long time on many other foods, like mushrooms, berries, honey. Lions need a diet rich in animal flesh. They prey. They favor the ungulates, that is to say, zebra, buffalo, giraffe, or antelope. They only avoid large herbivores that could be dangerous, like elephants, unless they are really young or small. Prey like monkeys or rabbits are not worth the effort for them. In the savannas or plains where lions live, it is not necessarily easy for them to catch fast animals because they are not that good at running fast for a long time. This is believed to be one of the mechanisms that pushed lions to become social. Thousands of years ago, they would have needed collaborative hunting to feed themselves and group life to defend large territories with water where prey can be found in order to encircle and ambush them. After tigers and lions, the third largest cat species is the jaguar, which is native to the Americas. Here again, the historical range of this species has shrunk, even though it is still quite large. Jaguars lived in forests and mountains all the way from Argentina in the south to around the US-Mexico border. There was a time centuries ago when the jaguars could have been seen in California or Texas, but not anymore. They are now limited to Central America and the jungles of Brazil, Guyana, Peru, Colombia, Venezuela, and Ecuador. Here again, the jaguar was to the mythology of the Aztecs or the Mayas what tigers and lions were to the Indians, the Chinese, or the Mediterranean and African peoples. The powerful predator that is at the same time feared and revered. Jaguars have a body length of up to 1.8 meters, 6 feet, and they can weigh about 300 pounds or 150 kilograms. They have this distinctive coat with spots and rosettes that leopards also have. Leopards live in Asia and Africa. I'll tell you about them in a minute. By the way, sometimes their coat turns entirely black in a few individuals that produce much more melanin. This is what is called a black panther. Black panthers are not a species. They are jaguars and leopards with fully black coats. But this does not affect them, and this variant is relatively frequent. In the case of leopards, it is estimated to touch about 10 to 11% of individuals, so about 1 in 10 leopards is a black panther. At a glance, jaguars and leopards look much alike, and this is no coincidence. The ancestors of jaguars are believed to have entered North and South America, crossing from Asia during the early Ice Age, the Pleistocene. Jaguars can live in forested or open terrains, but their preferred habitat is tropical, moist forests and wetlands with trees. Jaguars are good swimmers, and they ambush their prey. They are not sprinters, which is why a forested environment favors them. As I mentioned, they look like leopards, which are generally smaller. Male leopards weigh 30 to 70 kilograms, that's 70 to 160 pounds, and females only 20 to 40 kilograms. That makes them closer in size to big dogs. Leopards are widespread in Asia and Africa. They even lived in Europe during the Ice Age, and they can adapt to many different environments. Contrary to other bigger cats, historically they adapted to rainforests, steppes, mountains, even arid, almost desertic regions. Like tigers and jaguars, they are solitary except for mating or when females give birth to cubs, generally 2 to 4 cubs at the same time. apart from panthers, which are the largest cats. There are several well-known wild felids. One that resembles them closely but is not one because it descends from a different lineage is the cougar, also known as the puma or mountain lion. Cougars are the only living representative of their genus, puma. They belong to a different branch of the cat family than the big cats, but they are still close relatives. And cougars live only in North and South America, all the way from Canada in the north to Argentina and Chile in the south. Cougars are not huge animals. Males weigh around 60 kilograms or 130 pounds, and females around 40 to 85 pounds. Compared with the big cats, the panthers, the cougar has a rounder head, and its coat is far less vivid than that of jaguars or tigers. It is usually beige, the color of sand or stone, which helps it blend into its surroundings, as cougars are ambush predators and patient stalkers. When it comes to their hunting methods, they prey on ungulates, like deer, but since they are not exceptionally large, they can also turn to smaller prey, such as rodents, when necessary. Cougars are not really endangered because they are widespread and very adaptable. Large wild predators, their population has suffered from the loss of habitat as humans and human activities invaded their territories. Cougars are very reclusive. They just don't show up around people unless their territory is invaded, and they are surprised or really desperate for food. So there are very few reported attacks on humans, and most of the time these attacks happen when people enter their habitats and are perceived as threats, rightly or wrongly. Yet another iconic felid is the cheetah, which is known to be the fastest land animal and looks rather different than these large cats, with its small head and a body designed for speed. Instead of ambushing prey and showing up at the last second, cheetahs just run faster. They have a light build with longer, thinner legs than other cats, and they favor medium-sized prey like springboks, which are like medium-sized antelopes or impalas. They live mostly in Africa and hunt in open terrain, where their speed gives them a clear advantage. Cheetahs are also a vulnerable species, with only a few thousand individuals remaining in the wild. Another difference from other wild cats is that cheetahs are relatively easier to tame and to keep in close proximity to humans. They were never truly domesticated, but they can become accustomed to human presence and may even seek out once tamed. Actually, in ancient Egypt, there was this practice of taming cheetahs, and in the Arabian Peninsula or in India, they were trained for hunting. Still going down the size ladder, then there is the lynx, also often called bobcat in the US, because there are 4 extant species of lynxes. The Eurasian lynx that lives from northern and central Europe to Siberia, the Iberian lynx that only lives in Spain, the Canada lynx in Canada, and in the northern United States, near the border with Canada, and finally, the bobcat or red lynx that is endemic to North America and can be encountered almost everywhere in the U.S., in wilder regions, of course. Compared with other cats, lynxes have a very short tail and powerful back limbs. Their coat is relatively thick and warm because many of them live in very cold regions, including around the Arctic Circle. Like panther and puma, lynx is a separate genus of the cat family. Other wild cats that increasingly look like the domestic cat include the serval, an African wild cat, or the ocelot from Brazil to Mexico. And finally, we come to another genus called Felis, of which domestic cats are a part, but not the only representatives. There are wild cats, such as the European wildcat, which live in forests and prey on small rodents and birds. They look a lot like domestic cats, and yet they are a different species that is not domesticated, and that existed long before cats and humans began this companionship. So, how did some of these wild cats become pets? For a long time, it was believed that the domestication of cats had happened in Egypt because the earliest depictions of cats are from there. But archaeology suggests this was much older, dating to about 9,000 years ago, thousands of years before the emergence of civilization in Egypt. The domestication of cats would have been a consequence of the agricultural revolution that first started in the Middle East at the time, in the Fertile Crescent, this region that goes from the Persian Gulf to the Levant. Tribes began to adopt agriculture as their main food source, and with it, they settled instead of living as nomads. Scientists assume that this would be the time when small wildcats of the genus Felis would have approached human communities. Why would they do that? Because agriculture meant stocks of grain, and sedentary life meant trash, including food remains disposed of by humans. So, around the oldest agricultural communities, these were food sources for rodents like mice and rats that since then have lived near human groups for thousands of years. A large, stable population of rodents, and this is exactly what cats needed. And so they would have been drawn to human communities, humans who were very happy to find allies in their fight against rodents. So these wildcats, which already looked very much like modern domestic cats, were first tamed, and after centuries or perhaps thousands of years of living alongside humans, they became domesticated. This is a hypothesis based on archaeological records because the remains of cats were found on the island of Cyprus and dated to 8,000 to 9,000 years ago. But there were no wild cats living in Cyprus. So this suggests that humans brought them from the continent, indicating in turn that at that time cats had already been, if not domesticated, at least tamed. Another possibility, which does not exclude the first, is that some wildcats were naturally more inclined to tolerate or even seek the company of humans, much like certain wolves are thought to have been predisposed during the early domestication of dogs. Perhaps a small number of wildcats shared this tendency, forming the first population that eventually became domesticated. In any case, cats were strongly changed by domestication when it comes to their behavior. They may have a reputation for independence, and sometimes they are independent, but domestic cats live near and around humans. If they are socialized after birth, they seek the company of humans, even though they are often not as demonstrative and enthusiastic as dogs. That represents a radical change compared with truly wild cats, which behave very differently. They keep their distance, flee from humans, and have no desire whatsoever to be touched or petted. So the behavioral change was major, but physically not so much. Domestic cats still look a lot like wild cats of their genus, whereas the domestication of dogs has led to breeds of dogs that look extremely different from wolves. Cat domestication did not happen only in the Middle East. It seems another species, the leopard cat, also a species from the genus Felis, and a small one, contrary to what the name could suggest, was independently tamed in China around 7,000 to 8,000 years ago. But this line of tamed or partially domesticated cats did not prosper as much. Genetic studies indicate that it was entirely replaced by Felis catus, and they left no trace in the DNA of modern domestic cats. One reason that could explain the very minor changes in the anatomy of the appearance of cats with their domestication is that they already had traits as a wild species that made them ready to be domesticated. They were already playful. They were social too. Wild cats tend to congregate. They also have grooming habits and an intellectual drive to remain clean or hide their feces, which makes them perfect as pets. And in return, the limited changes they have gone through make them apt to survive in the wild. They have kept their drive to hunt because they were domesticated for it, and their speed, their sight, their senses in general make them very able to find their food in nature, even when they spend their entire life with humans. Now, as you also know, all domestic cats do not look the same. They are the same species, but there are breeds like dogs. There were always regional differences between cats, but no sign that they were voluntarily selected to create specific breeds. This is a practice that started in the 19th century. All the different modern breeds of cats that can be distinguished by their appearance, their physiognomy, their color, their details, and also on average their behavior, even though it is like for dogs, individuals also have their personalities. All these breeds started to be classified and developed since the 19th century. Apart from their behavior and their small size, cats have a lot of the characteristics of other felids. All these things we have already talked about, like their senses. All cats have relatively good vision, especially considering their night vision. I mentioned earlier that this was due to this membrane, the tapetum lucidum, that they have behind the retina. The dilation and the size of their pupils, which are bigger than for humans, also help them see in the dark. It is estimated that cats can see in the dark as well as us, with only 1/6 of the light level we need. So concretely at night, under the moonlight, and if there are a few stars visible in the sky, cats can see almost as well as we do in daylight. But not everything is that advanced with their vision. They see relatively fewer colors than we do. One thing you may have observed too is that they have another eyelid, a transparent one that is called a nictitating membrane. This membrane protects the eye, of course, but it also presents an advantage because, as this membrane is transparent, they can blink without hindering their vision. Many classes of mammals have developed such a third eyelid over the course of the evolution of life. Some have kept it, like some reptiles, some birds and sharks have one, and many other species have a remnant of it, a vestigial portion of this membrane, including us humans, on the inner side of our eyes, the side that is closest to the nose. If you take a look, you will see a membrane called plica semilunaris, which is exactly that, a remnant of such a membrane that our very ancient amphibian ancestors already had. A few mammals have kept it, supposedly because it was advantageous. They include mammals living near water like beavers, polar bears, or seals. Domestic cats have this reputation to avoid water, but in general, felids like it. They enjoy swimming and going into it. Apart from their vision, their hearing, and their sense of smell are also much more sensitive than ours. They also get help from their whiskers, which are important to them and should not be touched too much, and even less cut, because that would almost be a form of mutilation. The whiskers provide them with information, especially in the dark, by lightly touching objects or by sensing air currents. They can also trigger blink reflexes. If something would hurt the cat's eye, it will automatically close them unconsciously, thanks to a signal sent by the whiskers. As any cat owner knows well, cats have different personalities. They have different behaviors. They follow different patterns. And like for other domestic animals, these particularities, these individual traits, are the product of a complex interaction, one that is hard to anticipate, between their instincts, their predispositions, their genes, and some of the environmental factors they have experienced since birth, their interactions. Their natural drives include sociability. It is not obvious for cats that live with a human caretaker or a human family of several people, because their need for social interaction is replaced by their contact with humans. Even though many cats with the human family also have their secret life, they regularly escape the family's home and interact with other cats before coming back. The drive to form a group is made obvious among feral cats. They will often spontaneously form colonies that have some traits in common with the lion prides we discussed earlier. The core of the colony is a group of females. They are the ones that stay with their colony, whereas males will more often leave it to join another one or to live a solitary life. But a different thing with cat colonies is that each member has its own territory. The males defending a territory that can be much larger than the females, as much as 10 times larger, and their territory will overlap with the range of several females that he will regularly try to mate with. This is the kind of behavior I mentioned earlier with tigers, and to maintain social bonds within their groups or to interact with humans, cats have a wide range of communication tools at their disposal. We talked about purring before, but there are other types of vocalization. Many serve to express anger or distress, like hissing or growling. Others serve to call for attention and express a large range of feelings, like meowing. Cats also use body language. They use their bodies to communicate, first with a posture that indicates how relaxed or alert or afraid they may be. This tells of their mood, and body parts send more precise signals, especially the ears and the tail. For example, a raised tail is most of the time a friendly sign. It is a form of greeting, even more if the tail vibrates. Ears, when they are flattened, are not a good sign. They indicate hostility. There are also plenty of signals that we cannot really perceive or understand, or if we do, it is unconscious. Contrary to what one might think, cats do have facial expressions. Systematic studies have shown they can produce more than 26 different facial movements, such as changes in ear position, orbital tightening around the eyes, tension in the muzzle, or shifts in whisker position. By combining these movements, they may display more than 200 distinct facial expressions. Most of these are subtle enough that we rarely notice or interpret them, but they offer a glimpse into the complexity and richness of feline communication. There would be many more things to say about domestic cats, from their interactions, their grooming, or their habits to their appearance, and how to take good care of them. But this was only intended as an introduction. We've come to the end of our journey tonight. I hope you enjoyed this adventure, and I invite you to discover and learn more. I will be back with another story soon. Now you can let go and sleep. Or if you're not sleepy yet, you may pick another story from my ever-growing library. And until we meet again, good night. Sleep well.